Greetings, my lovelies. This is Blake here, and welcome to my review of X-Men Apocalypse. So I was really excited for this one to get released, at least at first, because I thought the trailers were awesome, and I thought the Apocalypse concept sounded interesting. But then the reviews started coming in, and shockingly, this film was getting critically panned, and in fact, for a while, it seemed like it was going to be the worst reviewed of the X-Men movies. So my expectations plummeted to where I actually had to force myself to go into the theaters because I no longer really wanted to see this movie if it wasn't going to be good. However, this arguably worked in the film's favor because my expectations were so low by that point that it was pretty easy to exceed them, and X-Men Apocalypse did. It's an okay movie. Definitely not great. Definitely one of the weaker X-Men movies, but I actually did get some entertainment out of it. In contrast to, let's say, Captain America Civil War, where I actually do believe that that is the superior film easily. However, my expectations were so much higher because of the acclaim and Marvel's very solid track record that I ended up feeling the sting that much more when it fell short of those expectations. So, what did X-Men Apocalypse do well? Well, like every other summer blockbuster to come out, it had very good special effects, very good action scenes. I do think that Bryan Singer is a very skilled director who can create visuals that have substance to them. So for example, near the end of the movie, there is a character who's obviously going to go down a dark path. And the way they use fire in the foreground gives the illusion that they are descending into hellfire. And I like those kinds of shots that actually mean something while also looking cool. I thought the cast mostly did a good job in their roles. You have obviously Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy reprising their roles, and they do excellent. I can't throw heaps of praise onto Jennifer Lawrence, though, as I thought her performance as Mystique felt very phoned in, and you could really tell that she no longer wants to play this character. In fact, she's practically outright said she does not want to in interviews. And her presence was very distracting for me. And it's even worse because she is arguably the main character of this storyline, even though it is very much an ensemble piece. So the fact that they regurgitated her character arc from X-Men First Class was very annoying. And I knew that the only reason they did that was because Jennifer Lawrence no longer wanted to wear the makeup for at least, as much as she has in previous movies. And the studios were more than willing to oblige her because they really want to capitalize on her fame. They don't want to obscure her appearance with the blue makeup. And I can't really blame them either because, on one hand, Jennifer Lawrence no longer needs X-Men. In fact, it's arguably beneath her. It certainly is as an actress. I actually prefer it when she's playing more eccentric, charismatic characters with more outgoing personalities. She can do the stoic persona fine, but I think I got kind of burned out on it with the Hunger Games franchise, and Mystique isn't any deeper of a character, at least anymore. So I can't blame her for not wanting to go through this very elaborate makeup process, and because she probably costs so much more than she used to, the studios are going to want to milk her fame for all it's worth. But still, I thought she was pretty boring in this movie, and I would not be disappointed if she just chose to move on afterwards. Another casting decision I was not crazy about was, I believe her name's Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. She's mainly known for playing Sansa from Game of Thrones. I got the impression that they were trying to do this aloof, antisocial, detached characterization, but it felt more like the actress was just bored. So the character could never really make that connection to me. So I found her line delivery in particular to be off, even though some of the dialogue was pretty bad anyway, so it wasn't entirely the actress's fault. And maybe she would have been able to make the role her own if she had more time to flesh out the character. But as it was, I was not crazy about her performance. But the rest of the casting choices I thought really worked. I liked the kids who played Nightcrawler, Scott Summers. My mind just totally storm. I don't know any of the actors or actresses' names yet, but I thought they played their characters very well. In some cases, maybe even better than the people who played these roles in the earlier movies. I really liked Quicksilver, and I thought his signature scene was awesome. And I enjoyed the character interactions, and there are some very funny moments. Even the Jean Grey, Scott Summers implied romance works because they don't force it down our throats. Finally, this is a surprisingly fast-paced movie. Even though it's over 2.5 hours long, I never became bored or impatient. I was always engaged on some level, even if only superficially, throughout the entire running time. Where I think X-Men Apocalypse screwed up, though, was it's working with a very faulty narrative structure. It's much more interested in fixing the continuity issues of previous films than it is in telling its own story. Now, you would think that the majority of the content would be designed around building up Apocalypse. And indeed, I thought Apocalypse was awesome in this movie. Oscar Isaac was phenomenal in the role. I liked his characterization. I liked his charisma. I liked the fact that he actually has complex motivations. But at the same time, the film itself doesn't seem to be that interested in Apocalypse. He's almost like an afterthought in his own movie, and most of the stuff you see him doing in trailers is taken out of context. All that mass destruction that he appears to be doing is actually from Magneto, and the whole scene where he grows huge, that's part of some weird mental battle near the end of the movie, and I really did not like how that played out. It was just weird and kind of confusing and stupid. But so this character, in hindsight, doesn't really seem that threatening, and if he emerged during the events of X-Men 1 or 2, I can't see how he'd be that dangerous, because he's fighting the same people, except they have gotten a lot more experience, and Wolverine is there too. So, considering all the build-up surrounding this character, he was a pretty big letdown. Even though, once again, I loved how Oscar Isaac portrayed him. But instead, most of the content is focused on reminding us of stuff that happened in previous movies, of recreating certain things which happened in previous movies, or trying to get important things which occurred in the earlier films but were, of course, written out of existence when Days of Future Past had the characters go back in time. They bring a version of that back into this new continuity. So, for example, Wolverine, it turns out that Stryker did abduct him and perform the same experiments, and leaving Wolverine in pretty much the same state that he was in before the previous or the original X-Men movie. And that creates some more continuity issues, because at the end of Days of Future Past, Mystique was disguised as Stryker. So what happened in between there? It's a mess. And the problem with X-Men is that the entire continuity is so fucked up that they shouldn't even draw any attention to it. They should just keep moving forward. But instead, X-Men Apocalypse moves backwards. I actually thought it was a brilliant decision to have Days of Future Past, which I actually thought was a little overrated, just do a complete hard reset. Get newer, younger cast members in there. Don't worry about all the continuity snarls of the previous films, and just move forward. Tell totally new stories and learn from your mistakes so you don't have similar continuity issues in future films. But all this did was now confuse me even further and create whole new continuity problems. and while drawing more attention to past mistakes. And I kept thinking at the end of this movie, they have this big reference to the Phoenix Saga, and I'm thinking to myself, is this just tying into X-Men 3, or is it setting up a sequel? And it's like, do I really want to see them go through the same Phoenix arc again? Now, I heard that what happens in the comics is a lot more compelling than what happened in X-Men 3, but still, I don't like this rewriting bullshit. I want them to keep going forward, introduce new storylines and new villains. So that's just the big problem with X-Men Apocalypse, is that it's more interested in the past than it is in the present, and that, unfortunately, they completely wasted Apocalypse himself in the process. So that is my issue with X-Men Apocalypse, and in my opinion, this movie really could not have been better with this kind of narrative. When you look at X-Men 3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine, I actually do think that those films could have been a lot better if, let's say Bryan Singer didn't drop out of X-Men 3 at the last moment and get replaced with Brett Ratner. Ratner is a style over substance director, whereas Bryan Singer is much more about the substance. And I think he would have brought out a lot more emotional depth from X-Men 3's story. And X-Men Origins Wolverine just kind of felt like it was rushed into production. It needed a few more rewrites to iron out the plot holes and a little bit more time to fix the special effects problems. Those movies could have easily been fixed. But in X-Men Apocalypse case, I felt like the franchise is collapsing under its own weight. So it was a problematic project from the beginning. So that is all I have to say. I did not do a written review, but I have done written reviews of The Armor of God and its sequel, Operation Condor, both Jackie Chan movies, so please read those. I also did a written review of WWE's Extreme Rules, and my next one should be Anaconda, the 1997 classic. So stay tuned for all that. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Should you go check out X-Men Apocalypse? It's up to you and how you feel about this franchise as a whole. It's not bad enough to change your mind. It's not good enough to change your mind. It's just okay. So I shall see you guys later.